It was a quiet night in Galveston, Texas in 2001, until a grisly discovery in the waters of Galveston Bay sent shockwaves through the nation. A dismembered body, floating in black garbage bags, would lead investigators down a path no one could have predicted, a path that intertwined wealth, power, and murder. It was the unraveling of a story decades in the making. From the glittering high-rises of New York City to the dusty streets of small-town Texas, the tale of Robert Durst, the enigmatic billionaire heir, would captivate the world. Heir to one of New York's most prominent real estate dynasties, Durst's name was synonymous with prestige, until it wasn't. Behind the fortune and family name lay an evil trap of deception, betrayal, and murder that spanned over 40 years. But it wasn't just the crimes that shocked the public. It was the bizarre twists, the courtroom drama, and the chilling confessions that left everyone questioning. How did he get away with it for so long? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking saga of Robert Durst, billionaire heir turned suspected killer. Don't forget to subscribe for more gripping true crime stories as we delve into the mysteries and madness behind the headlines. Robert Durst was born on April 12, 1943, into one of New York City's most prominent families. His father, Seymour Durst, was a towering figure in Manhattan real estate, a man who built the Durst organization into a cornerstone of the city's skyline. With properties like One Bryant Park and 4 Times Square, the Durst family name became synonymous with wealth, power, and influence. It was a name that opened doors, commanded respect, and represented generations of success. As the eldest son, Robert was expected to follow in his father's footsteps, carrying the weight of the family legacy. He grew up in Scarsdale, a wealthy suburb of New York, where privilege and opportunity shaped his early years. But his childhood was far from idyllic. At just 7 years old, Robert experienced a tragedy that would leave an indelible mark on his life. In 1950, his mother, Bernice Durst, died after falling from the roof of their family home. Though officially ruled a suicide, the circumstances surrounding her death were both traumatic and complex. Robert later claimed that his father had taken him to a window to witness his mother on the roof moments before her fatal fall. Whether this memory was accurate or distorted by time, it became a defining moment in Robert's life. In the years that followed, Robert's relationship with his father grew increasingly strained. Seymour Durst was known for his sharp business acumen and disciplined approach to life. He was a man of precision and control, qualities he expected his children to emulate. But Robert often found himself at odds with these expectations. Described by those who knew him as introverted and unconventional, Robert struggled to fit into the mold his father had created for him. This tension only deepened as he reached adulthood. The Durst family dynamics were further complicated by Robert's siblings. His younger brother, Douglas, would ultimately take over the family business, a decision that reportedly caused deep resentment in Robert. Feeling sidelined and undervalued, he drifted away from the family enterprise, choosing a life that seemed to diverge from the carefully curated image of the Durst dynasty. Despite his departure from the core of the family business, Robert remained connected to its immense wealth. He married Kathleen McCormick in 1973, a bright and ambitious medical student. Together, they appeared to lead a life of privilege and opportunity. But by the late 1970s, cracks began to appear in their marriage. Friends and acquaintances described Robert as controlling, and Kathleen reportedly confided in close friends about her unhappiness. She spoke of arguments and an escalating sense of tension in their relationship. In 1982, Kathleen Durst, the wife of Robert Durst, disappeared under circumstances that raised more questions than answers. Kathleen, known to friends and family as a vibrant and ambitious young woman, had been pursuing her medical degree while navigating the complexities of her marriage to Robert. The couple lived in a sprawling South Salem home in Westchester County, New York, a picturesque setting that belied the growing tensions within their relationship. On the evening of January 31st, 1982, Kathleen attended a party at a friend's house. According to multiple accounts, she seemed agitated and expressed concerns about returning home. Later that night, after an alleged heated argument with Robert, she vanished. Robert claimed that he had driven Kathleen to the train station so she could return to their Manhattan apartment. However, friends and family questioned this account, pointing out that Kathleen had confided in them about her fears and described Robert as increasingly controlling in their marriage. The days following her disappearance were marked by confusion and suspicion. Kathleen's friends reported her missing after she failed to show up for medical school classes, a stark departure from her usual diligence. Investigators interviewed Robert, who maintained that he had last seen Kathleen boarding the train. Yet, discrepancies in his story began to surface, including reports that he waited several days to officially report her missing. Despite intensive efforts, no concrete evidence of Kathleen's whereabouts was ever uncovered, and her case went cold. By the late 1990s, Robert had settled in Galveston, Texas, a sharp contrast to the opulence of his New York upbringing. Living in a modest apartment, he adopted an unusual disguise, presenting himself as a mute woman named Dorothy Senior. This peculiar lifestyle choice puzzled neighbors and added another layer of mystery to his already enigmatic persona. Robert Durst's story was far from over. The disappearance of his wife was only the beginning of a narrative that would stretch across decades and involve multiple deaths. Investigators, journalists, and the public would later revisit Kathleen's case, uncovering new details and raising fresh questions. But it wasn't until 2000, with the murder of Susan Berman, that the story would take an even darker turn. Fast forward to December 2000. Susan Berman, a close friend of Robert Durst and the daughter of a Las Vegas mobster, was found dead in her Benedict Canyon home in Los Angeles. Susan had been shot in the head at close range, in what authorities described as an execution-style killing. Her death occurred just as investigators were reportedly preparing to question her about Kathleen's disappearance. Friends of Susan later revealed that she had been deeply loyal to Robert, even helping him manage public scrutiny after Kathleen's disappearance. The investigation into Susan's murder took an unexpected turn with the discovery of an anonymous letter sent to the Beverly Hills Police Department. The envelope, marked in block letters, contained a single word: cadaver. It led authorities to Susan's home. Handwriting analysis and other evidence would later link this letter to Robert Durst. This connection, paired with the timing of Susan's death, raised suspicions that Robert had silenced her to protect himself from incriminating revelations about Kathleen's case. What began as a story of privilege and wealth was now unfolding into a tale of tragedy, suspicion, and loss. The events surrounding Robert Durst's life would captivate the nation and challenge investigators for decades to come. The story didn't end there. In 2001, Robert Durst resurfaced in Galveston, Texas, where he had been living under an assumed identity. Neighbors described him as an eccentric figure who largely kept to himself, but his unusual disguise only added to the mystique surrounding him. It was during his time in Galveston that Robert's name became associated with another violent crime. Morris Black, a 71-year-old drifter who lived in the same apartment building as Robert, was found dismembered. His body parts were discovered floating in Galveston Bay, stuffed into black garbage bags. The gruesome discovery led police to Robert's apartment, where evidence suggested a violent altercation had occurred. Robert claimed that he had killed Morris in self-defense during a struggle over a firearm. Despite the severity of the charges, Robert was acquitted of murder, with the jury accepting his self-defense argument. However, he admitted to dismembering Morris's body, an act he described as a panicked decision. The connection between these events and the broader timeline of Robert Durst's life painted a troubling picture. Kathleen's disappearance, Susan's murder, and the death of Morris Black were now part of an unsettling pattern that investigators and the public could no longer ignore. Meanwhile, the image of Robert Durst living as a mute woman in Galveston shocked many who had followed his story. It was a strategy that underscored his determination to evade detection, yet it also brought him into situations that would eventually lead to his capture. The events surrounding Robert Durst's life were connected by a series of crucial details: Kathleen's disappearance, Susan's murder, Morris Black's death, and the infamous cadaver note. These moments, spanning decades and multiple states, formed the foundation of a case that would challenge investigators, legal experts, and the public to untangle the truth. Following Kathleen Durst's disappearance in 1982, the initial investigation struggled to gain momentum. While her friends and family pushed for answers, the lack of physical evidence and clear leads hampered law enforcement's ability to move forward. Robert Durst maintained his version of events, stating he had last seen Kathleen when he dropped her off at the train station. With no body and no definitive proof of foul play, the case stalled. Authorities, lacking substantial evidence, classified Kathleen as a missing person, leaving her family to wrestle with unanswered questions. For nearly 2 decades, Kathleen's case remained cold, overshadowed by other investigations and forgotten by the public. However, everything changed in December 2000, when Susan Berman, Robert Durst's longtime friend and confidant, was found dead in her Los Angeles home. Susan had been shot at close range, and her death occurred just days before she was scheduled to meet with investigators about Kathleen's disappearance. Susan, a writer and the daughter of a mobster, had previously been a vocal supporter of Robert, publicly defending him against accusations surrounding Kathleen. Her death, therefore, immediately raised suspicions. Forensic evidence from the Galveston crime scene became a critical component of the investigation. Traces of blood and physical evidence linked Robert to the apartment where the altercation occurred. Additionally, security footage and financial records placed him in the area during the time of the crime. Though Robert was ultimately acquitted of murder in Morris Black's case, The trial highlighted patterns of behavior that would become central to understanding his history. Over time, law enforcement, the media, and the public began to scrutinize Robert Durst's life more closely. In interviews with friends, family members, and law enforcement, a picture of Robert emerged as a man who was intelligent and eccentric, but also unpredictable and, at times, troubling. Those who knew him described episodes of erratic behavior, a quick temper, and a tendency to isolate himself from others. These character traits, combined with his apparent willingness to lie about key events, made him a person of significant interest in all three cases. As the investigations into these cases progressed, one question remained at the forefront of public discourse. Could Kathleen Durst's case have been solved sooner? Some argued that law enforcement had overlooked key details in 1982, while others believed Robert's wealth and family connections had shielded him from deeper scrutiny. The renewed focus on his life and actions suggested that earlier investigations may have missed opportunities to uncover the truth. The intertwining stories of Kathleen's disappearance, Susan's murder, and Morris Black's death highlighted a complex web of relationships, decisions, and events that spanned decades. Together, they painted a portrait of a man whose life defied simple explanations, challenging investigators to untangle the threads of his past and pursue justice for the lives he had touched. In 2015, the story of Robert Durst took an unexpected turn during the filming of the HBO documentary The Jinx, The Life and Deaths of Robert Durst. The series, which sought to explore the unanswered questions surrounding Kathleen Durst's disappearance, Susan Behrman's murder, and Morris Black's death, became a cultural phenomenon. Through interviews, archival footage, and in-depth reporting, the filmmakers pieced together a narrative that painted Robert Durst as a central figure in all three cases. It was during the final stages of filming that Robert agreed to a series of candid interviews. These interviews provided unprecedented access to his perspective and behavior, allowing viewers and the filmmakers to witness moments of his unguarded personality. In one of the most dramatic developments of the series, a seemingly small detail took on immense significance: a handwriting analysis. The filmmakers presented Robert with two pieces of writing: the infamous cadaver note sent to the Beverly Hills Police Department after Susan Behrman's murder, and a prior letter written by Robert to Susan. Both contained the same peculiar misspelling of Beverly as Beverly. When confronted with this evidence, Robert appeared visibly uncomfortable. His reaction sparked widespread speculation about his connection to the note, which had long been a critical piece of evidence in Susan's case. The filmmakers later revealed that Robert had been caught on a hot microphone during a break in the interview. Believing he was alone, he muttered to himself, "What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course." This shocking moment became the centerpiece of The Jinx's finale, leaving viewers stunned and reigniting public interest in the cases around the same time that The Jinx was set to air its final episode. Law enforcement made a breakthrough. On March 14, 2015, just one day before the finale, Robert Durst was arrested in New Orleans on charges related to Susan Behrman's murder. His arrest was the result of a renewed investigation into the 2000 case, bolstered by the evidence presented in the documentary. Authorities discovered Robert living under another assumed name in a hotel, carrying a revolver, cash, and a map of Cuba, leading to speculation that he was planning to flee. The discovery of the cadaver note and its connection to Robert Durst played a pivotal role in the legal proceedings that followed. Forensic handwriting experts testified that the similarities between the note and Robert's writing were too significant to ignore. Combined with the timing of Susan's murder and her close relationship with Robert, prosecutors argued that he had silenced her to prevent her from revealing information about Kathleen's disappearance. As the cases progressed, the emotional toll on the victims' families became increasingly apparent. Kathleen's family, who had waited decades for answers, expressed their anguish and frustration with the justice system. They spoke of Kathleen's dreams of becoming a doctor and the pain of losing her without closure. Similarly, Susan Behrman's friends and relatives shared memories of her kindness and loyalty, contrasting sharply with the circumstances of her death. The family of Morris Black recounted the shock of learning about his violent end and the complex emotions surrounding Robert's acquittal in that case. In the courtroom, these emotional testimonies were accompanied by dramatic moments of legal strategy and cross-examination. Archival footage captured the intensity of the trials, from prosecutors presenting their case to Robert's defense team working to dismantle the evidence against him. The tension in the courtroom was noticeable as jurors weighed the mountain of evidence against Robert's claims of innocence. Despite the compelling narrative presented by prosecutors, questions remained. Robert's defense team argued that his hot mic statement during the jinx was incoherent and inadmissible as a confession. They also challenged the reliability of the handwriting analysis, suggesting that the similarities between the cadaver note and Robert's writing could be coincidental. These arguments raised doubts among some observers, fueling a broader debate about whether the evidence was strong enough to convict him. Even with a confession seemingly caught on tape, the question persisted: would a jury believe it? The case against Robert Durst was complex, spanning decades and involving circumstantial evidence, personal relationships, and moments of extraordinary public interest. For investigators, prosecutors, and the families of Kathleen, Susan, and Morris, the stakes could not have been higher. The outcome of the trials would determine whether justice could finally be served for crimes that had haunted so many for so long. The acquittal in the Morris Black case drew widespread attention and criticism. Legal experts and the public questioned how a man who admitted to such actions could walk free. However, for many, the verdict underscored the challenges of the legal system in proving intent, particularly when the defendant's account of the events could not be definitively disproven. Nearly 2 decades later, in 2021, the case of Susan Behrman's murder had finally reached the courtroom. This time, the evidence was more conclusive. The infamous cadaver note, combined with testimony about Robert's motive to silence Susan before she could speak to investigators about Kathleen's disappearance, formed the foundation of the prosecution's case. Over the course of the trial, jurors heard from handwriting experts, witnesses familiar with Robert and Susan's relationship, and law enforcement officials who detailed the timeline of events surrounding her death. The trial also featured emotional testimony from Susan's friends and family, who painted a picture of a vibrant and loyal woman whose life was cut short. The prosecution argued that Susan's death was a calculated move to protect Robert from the legal consequences of Kathleen's disappearance. After months of testimony and deliberation, the jury found Robert guilty of first-degree murder. It was a moment of relief for many who had followed the case for years, as well as for the families of Susan and Kathleen, who had long sought accountability. However, the resolution of Susan Behrman's case did not answer all the lingering questions about Kathleen Durst's disappearance. While investigators believed Robert was responsible, they had never located Kathleen's body, leaving a critical piece of the puzzle missing. Without this evidence, the possibility of a trial for Kathleen's presumed murder remained uncertain for decades. The renewed investigation in the early 2000s, coupled with Robert's conviction in Susan's case, suggested that progress was being made. But time was running out. In 2022, Robert Durst died in custody at the age of 78. His death came just months after his conviction for Susan's murder and before he could face trial for Kathleen's case. At the time of his death, Robert was battling numerous health issues, including cancer and other complications that had been worsening over the years. For some, his death felt like an incomplete ending, a conclusion that left questions unanswered and closure out of reach. Among the unresolved questions was the fate of Kathleen's body. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no trace of her remains had been found. This lack of physical evidence continued to frustrate her family and those who had worked tirelessly on her case. Additionally, speculation lingered about whether there were other victims connected to Robert Durst's life. Some investigators and observers believed that his transient lifestyle and history of peculiar behavior might have concealed further crimes. The life and legal saga of Robert Durst serve as a profound example of how wealth and influence can shape the pursuit of justice. For decades, questions surrounded the disappearance of Kathleen Durst, the execution-style murder of Susan Berman, and the tragic death of Morris Black. Each case, connected by its own complexities, painted a picture of a man whose life intersected with tragedy in ways that could not be ignored. While Robert Durst's eventual conviction for Susan Behrman's murder brought a measure of accountability, the lingering questions about Kathleen's fate and the circumstances of Morris Black's death highlight the challenges faced by investigators and the legal system. For many, these cases underscore the importance of persistence, the value of forensic evidence, and the crucial role of storytelling in uncovering truths that might otherwise remain hidden. What do you think? Did Robert Durst evade justice for too long, or did the legal system ultimately hold him accountable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on this case and the impact it had on the lives of those involved. If you found this story insightful and compelling, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. We'll continue to explore the stories that challenge our understanding of justice and reveal the complexities of the human experience. Next time, we take a deep dive into one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American history, the Zodiac Killer. From cryptic letters to mysterious murders, this case continues to baffle investigators and the public alike. You won't want to miss it.